A wooden booth on a night street, strung with small warm bulbs, glowing like a lit window full of company. In front of it, a queue, and near the front, a man in a red coat holding a ticket, the way we all hold things when we're nervous. He isn't asking to live forever, because nobody in this queue is. He wants something smaller and harder to say out loud. The thing we all want, and you want it too. He doesn't want to be done yet. That's the whole want, and it's ours as much as his. And for 140 years, wherever our want has stood on a cold street, this booth has appeared next to it. Same stall. New paint? You've seen this booth before, even if you don't know it yet. Now watch the transaction, because the transaction never changes. The man hands over a fortune. The booth hands back a glowing vial and a feeling. That's the trade, and we're going to watch it happen 5 times. Keep your eye on the man in the red coat. He'll be here all century, and so, if we're honest, will you. Paris, 1889. A gaslit lecture hall, rows of serious beards. A famous doctor, 72 years old, tells the Société de Biologie that he's been injecting himself with extracts of dog and guinea pig testicles, and that his strength, his mind, and his appetite have all come back. His name is Brown-Sequard, and his evidence is that he feels terrific. One man, self-reported PEP. Hold that number. 1. Because before that same year ends, more than 12,000 doctors are giving his elixir to patients like us, and the makers are getting rich. Nobody ran a trial. Nobody waited. That's the first law of our whole story, so keep it where you can see it. The market moves faster than the evidence. And here's the second law. It was placebo. The extracts held nothing. The feeling was real. The medicine wasn't, and hope, you'll notice, is an organ we all have. 12,000 careful, licensed doctors, all behaving reasonably, given one small false premise, that one man's mood counts as data. The premise is the joke. It always will be. New paint. The 1920s, and the queue outside the booth is now rich men, the kind of men who'd demand a receipt for a hat, men who'd send back soup, and they're holding numbered tickets, patiently, for a surgeon named Serge Voronov to graft a slice of chimpanzee testicle onto them. First official graft, June 12, 1920. Around 300 procedures by the mid-20s, run from a laboratory Voronov directed at the Collège de France, and demand ran so hot, there were plans for a special reserve in Africa, just to keep him in monkeys. Sit with that image, a wildlife preserve, set up so wealthy men could feel young. If you'd had the money in 1925, someone would have offered you an appointment. The customers reported better memory, longer working hours. Of course they did. We'd all have complained about the hat. The science collapsed by the 1940s, and Voronov died poor in 1951. We never asked for our money back. There's no counter for that at the booth. New paint again, and this coat is the worst one, so we put the jokes down here. An American pharmacy shelf, and on it, a tonic that glows. Radithor. Radium. Dissolved in water, sold for your health. Energy you can drink. Modern science in a bottle. A steel heir named Eben Byers believed in it the way you'd want any customer to believe in you. He drank roughly 1,400 bottles. The radium settled into his bones and began taking his jaw apart from the inside. The doctors called it radium jaw, and surgeons removed the jaw, and it wasn't enough. And in 1932, he died. The era kept a line about him, and people repeated it like a joke. The radium water worked fine until his jaw came off. Say it slowly, just once, and you'll hear it stop being funny. Here's the part worth carrying out of the 1930s, and we should say it plainly. The product wasn't stopped by a study or a regulator or anyone's better judgment. It was stopped by his death. A customer had to pay the full price, famously in the papers, before the booth took that paint off. That's what regulation looked like in 1932. A funeral. By the modern era, the booth doesn't stand outside the institutions anymore. It wears their clothes. In 2006, a real Harvard laboratory, run by David Sinclair, a tenured professor of genetics at Harvard Medical School, a working scientist, and we state that plainly because it matters, publishes a striking result: obese mice on resveratrol, the red wine molecule doing better than they should. What happens next was never about him. It's about what the rest of us did with the hope. A company called Sertris rides the result to an IPO, and in April 2008, the drug giant GSK buys it for $720 million. Be precise about what that number is, because you'll meet it again. It isn't a payment for a medicine because there was no medicine yet. It's what one of the biggest drug companies on earth would pay for the possibility. Then the record fills in. A trial in cancer patients is halted after 5 deaths from kidney failure. The cause contested, the trial stopped. Then Pfizer and Amgen, checking on their own, report that the key lab test was an artifact of a fluorescent dye. The signal everyone bought wasn't the molecule working. It was the measurement glowing. GSK shut Sertris down by 2013. No announcement at the volume of the launch, just a closed door. $720 million. And the receipt says, a feeling and some light. New paint, and now the vial is a bag. 2019, a company called Ambrosia is selling transfusions of blood plasma from donors aged 16 to 25 to customers 35 and up at $8,000 to $12,000 a session across 6 clinics. Young blood on an invoice, $12,000 for the bag, and presumably the Wi-Fi was free. Then, February 19th, the FDA issues a statement. No proven benefit and real risks. Infection, allergic reactions, risks to the heart. 1 page of government prose, and Ambrosia halts treatments within hours. Hours, which tells you something quietly enormous about this economy of ours. Paper sells the promise and paper revokes it. A prospectus opened the booth. A press release closed it. Nothing biological changed that afternoon. Only the story did, the story we were telling ourselves. And today the booth doesn't even need paint because its most famous customer runs it on himself. By his own published figures, around $2 million a year, roughly 111 supplements daily. A vegan diet under 2,000 calories. All of it finished before 11 in the morning. Bed at 8:30. And some 30 physicians watching. We're not laughing at the man, and you shouldn't either. The customer was never the joke here, and his want is ours in a more expensive coat. Look closely and you'll recognize the coat. But look at the logistics. 111 pills before 11 a.m. isn't a medicine cabinet, it's a supply chain. Here's a man who has conquered wealth, conquered ambition, conquered 8:30 bedtimes, and the last remaining enemy is lunchtime. So we do what the queue never does. We ask the referee. The National Institute on Aging runs an interventions testing program. Multiple sites, genetically varied mice, the aging field's own gold standard. The answer the record owed us. It fed those mice resveratrol, the $720 million molecule, at 2 doses and measured how long they lived. No lifespan extension. Not at the low dose, not at the high dose, not in males, not in females. The referee held the miracle up to the light, and the light went straight through. And if you've been counting, 5 booths, 5 collapses, 1 amber vial. In 140 years, the booth has produced 0 verified extra years of human life. 0. Meanwhile, on the same table, unclaimed, sits the stuff we walk past. Across the big studies, the most active among us run something like 25 to 40% lower risk of dying, all causes counted, than the least active. And the studies that strap a device to your wrist read higher still. That range is in effect the entire elixir aisle has never once produced in a human trial. It's free, it's available to you today, and the booth can't stock it, because you can't put a walk in a vial. And here's the joke history keeps making, the one we keep refusing to get. The boring, free things mostly involve other people. A grip is a receipt, and it takes another hand to shake it. A Tuesday is a container, and it holds whoever shows up for you. Whatever lengthens our lives looks a lot less like a vial and a lot more like company. Back at the booth at dusk, the bulbs as warm as ever, and the man in the red coat at the front of the queue at last, vial in hand. The same amber it's been since 1889. He was never actually buying more life. The ledger says the booth never once had any. What it sold him every century was relief from the wait, a way to spend today feeling like something was being done about tomorrow. And we've all bought an evening of that, and that product works. It works every single time. The moment you buy it, no trial needed. That's why the booth never dies. Then he does the one thing nobody at this stall has done in 140 years. He turns around. He sees the queue, not the booth's version, wallets in an orderly line, but the true version, which is us. Every era at once, the coats and hats changing down the row. Every one of us not done yet. Every one of us holding a ticket like his. He wanted more life, and that was never wrong. If you've ever wanted one more year with someone, you know the want is yours too. The booth sold him a vial of it 5 times, and 5 times the vial collapsed, and none of that gets forgiven tonight, not by us. But look at what was standing behind him, behind all of us, the whole time. More life, the actual kind, the boring, free, documented kind, was waiting in the same line, holding its own ticket. So he steps out of the queue. The bulbs keep glowing, because they always will. There's probably a 6th coat of paint going up near you now. But he's walking down the row, past strangers who aren't strangers, all of us wanting the same small thing. And it turns out you don't drink it. You turn around and you say hello to it.